On today's show, we're going to do an Atlanta Falcons mock draft that takes into account a Justin Fields trade, because if Atlanta trades for Justin Fields, they're probably not going to have a second round pick anymore, and they're probably going to alter their draft strategy a little bit. So let's run through what a mock draft would look like with Justin Fields on the Atlanta Falcons. And so we should probably start by looking over what the trade would look like to get Justin Fields. And this is my projection, and this is the one I'm sticking by. Second round pick to the Bears, 43rd overall, and it's a 2025 fourth round pick that is conditional and could become a third. So 2025, not 2024, excuse the typo. Fourth round pick next year that could become a third round pick depending on whether or not Atlanta extends Justin Fields. So that is my trade projection. Second and a 2025, not fourth round pick. Now, with that being said, the Falcons still have their first round pick, and at number 1, 8 overall, I go Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama. That may surprise some of you that have been longtime viewers of the channel, but this is not a mock draft of what would Petey do if Petey's the GM. I'm not the GM. I'm not Terry Fontenot. So what does it matter what I would do? My job is to think, what would Terry Fontenot do? And from everything I'm hearing and all the signs I'm seeing, they're pointing edge rusher at number 8. And I can't fault or blame Terry Fontenot for that, right? You think to the last few drafts, what has he done? He had an offensive coach, so he went out and got some offensive players like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. Now he has a defensive-minded head coach, and he still has the 8th overall pick. So what is he going to do? He may try and invest in his new head coach and give him a big, shiny toy to work with in Dallas Turner, who came off the edge for the Crimson Tide last year for 15.5 tackles for loss and 11 sacks according to the team website and 2 forced fumbles. So let's talk about Dallas Turner in more detail. He came into the combine measuring 6'2", 247 pounds, so a little bit on the smaller size for a defensive end in a 4-3 defense, which is good because he'll be playing in a 3-4 defense and can be that outside linebacker. Now, my big pro for Dallas Turner is he's got an elite first step. What does that mean? When the ball is snapped, Dallas Turner is already meeting the tackle. A lot of times, offensive tackles want to be able to get their hands out to create a barrier between the edge rusher. The issue is Dallas Turner meets the offensive tackle, not the other way around. He's also got great closing ability with that elusive speed to make sure that pressures are turned into sacks. Now, the con for Dallas Turner is because he's a little bit on the smaller-ish side, not quite as big as like a Will Anderson, he doesn't have a great anchor ability, which means if he gets pushed around and doesn't meet the tackle, he can't necessarily hold down a defensive end and make sure that things are contained and the play does not get outside of him. But it's important for Terry Fontenot to find a long-term solution at edge rusher. Because I looked, and maybe I missed a guy, but since 2000, the Atlanta Falcons have only had 7 players record 10 or more sacks in a season. You got to go back to 2016 for the last one. Vic Beasley was a one-hit wonder for the Falcons. And ironically enough, you might not remember, also an 8th overall pick for Atlanta. For that, you got a run of John Abraham, and then like Roderick Coleman, Patrick Kearney, not a lot of great production. There's a handful of John Abraham seasons, so just took that 2012 one, but not great. Not great. But who do you want to pick at number 8? Let me know down below in the comment section which player you would like a lot. I love Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors more than Dallas Turner, but I'm not calling the shots. I'm not in the war room, and I think Atlanta's going to go defense. Now, they don't have a second-round pick in this mock draft because that belongs to the Chicago Bears now, but they do have a third-round pick, which I think they will use on USC wide receiver Brendan Rice. The 6'2", 212-pound receiver, stop me if you've heard this before, is the son of Jerry Rice. So you know he got great genes, and it is in his blood. Now, here's my pro for Brendan Rice. Down-the-field playmaking abilities. He's got great track speed. He was a track star in high school. He ran like a 10.7 second 100-yard dash or something. So if you're looking for a guy to extend the play or extend the field and be a vertical, take the top off the defense kind of guy, he's your man. Now the con is he doesn't quite play to his size, I feel like. He's kind of a slender frame, so he could maybe stand to put on a few pounds or so of muscle, and he struggles with contact as a result. But he knows one thing and one thing only, and that's scoring touchdowns. He had 45 receptions last year. 12 were touchdowns. Like, do the quick average there. That's like 1 in every 4 passes. 5, yeah, 12 times 5, like not even 12 times 4 passes are being caught for touchdowns. 17.6 average. That was horrible math by me on the spot here, but you guys can do it on your calculator. He knows a thing or two about finding the end zone. And Atlanta needs wide receivers. They could have gone with one in the first round, but I think that we'll see an investment for Raheem Morris's defense in that spot. So instead, they know it's a very deep wide receiver class, and they go get one in round number 3 to replace Matt Collins, Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, Kadarius Hodge. All of them are free agents. Let's move on to the next third-round selection. This one comes from the Jacksonville Jaguars. If they extend Calvin Ridley before March 13th, it improves to a second rounder. But for now, it's a third. And I've got them going cornerback out of Missouri, Chris Abrams-Drain. 5'11", 178 pounds. He was a 3-year starter for Mizzou, actually came in as a 4-star recruit at wide receiver, made the transition after just 1 season in Columbia, and he really thrived for them in their secondary. He is long in terms of arm length and whatnot, doesn't have tremendous height necessarily, but he's got long speed I'm looking for and quick feet and the ability to change direction quickly. And that's what you look for in cornerbacks, right? Fluid hips so that if they lose early on in the wide receiver's route, they have the ability to recover. Now, the con is he's not great at tackling, and he gives up way too many big plays down the field. But if you're looking for a guy that you want to coach up, and man, you got to wonder, Jimmy Lake, your defensive coordinator who is specializing in defensive backs, that's what he majored in. This could be a good project for him to reduce the big plays and just focus on the pros he has right now. Drain last season for the Tigers, 16 pass breakups, 4 interceptions. He's got the ball skills. We saw that with being a 4-star wide receiver recruit coming into Mizzou. And he just needs to work on not giving up the big plays so often. And that seems like a fun project for Jimmy Lake. And also take into account Atlanta's need at corner. I wouldn't be opposed to them going cornerback in round number 1. I would love a duo of A.J. Terrell and Terrion Arnold. But if they decide to go Dallas Turner in that spot, and then they want to get a wide receiver, they may look to replace Jeff Okudah in round number 3. Let's move on to the 4th round where I go defensive tackle now, Michael Hall Jr. I could be convinced into flip-flopping corner and DT in round 3 versus round 4, but I didn't want to wait too long on a corner, and I decided let's pause on investing in the trenches until day 3 of the draft, where I get the Buckeye DT, who is 6'2", 280 pounds. That's a big reason why he's available in day 3 of the draft. Another reason why he suffered a lot of injuries during his time at Columbus. Started 11 games for Ohio State, so had some issues with staying on the field, but he's got a high pass rush upside. He's got a great motor. He's got a great first step. He is elusive. He is quick, but he's a little on the smaller side. Like 280 pounds, offensive linemen are going to push you around in the NFL at that weight. So this is a pick for the long haul, right? This is a pick where over the first 2 years, you hope he can put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, work his way closer to 300 pounds, stay on the field. And that's why I'm waiting on a defensive tackle pick, because Atlanta can afford to do that, right? You look at what Michael Hall was able to do for the Buckeyes last season. The numbers don't jump out to you, but keep in mind he did struggle with starting an entire season for OSU. However, Atlanta doesn't have a dire need at defensive tackle. Like David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett, 2 guys under contract for this year and next year. So this is a pick for replenishing the depth, where you've got some free agents like Contavious Street, Huggins, Graziano, like all those guys are free agents. So if you want to get some new backups, this could be a good spot to do it. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's mock draft, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so. Help us continue to grow to be the #1 Falcons YouTube channel out there. And if you are subscribed, I'm curious, how long? Like, did you join the channel week 1 of the season? Did you join last offseason, during the draft last year? I'm always curious to see how long people have been subscribed to the channel for. Let's move on to our 5th round selection, where I go tight end out of Kansas State, Bencic. 142 overall, the 6'4", 254-pound tight end out of Manhattan, Kansas, started 28 games over 3 years for the Wildcats, and he's truly an incredible story. He was a 0-star recruit that went to K-State out of Waterloo, Iowa, just to try and walk onto the team as a fullback. And then he opens up his tool chest. He becomes a receiving threat for the team. And now he's going to the draft a year early in his collegiate career because he became one of the best tight ends in college football, a semifinalist for the John Mackey Award, which is the best tight end in all of college football. Now, the con I've got for him is he doesn't have an elite trait, right? He wasn't a big-time recruit. He doesn't have incredible speed necessarily, but he's got one hell of a motor. To go from a 0-star walk-on fullback to being one of the best tight ends in football, something tells me you know how to work hard in the offseason. And I'm looking for guys that aren't just going to settle, aren't just going to be complacent and settle for where they are right now. Guys that want to improve their game every single year. And in round 5, I'll take character traits like that every single day of the week. Toss into the production level, it's hard to find high production tight ends in college because the college game is just not built for tight ends. But despite that, he still had 676 yards and 6 touchdowns for the Wildcats last year. And then to round out my mock draft, I'm going to go offensive tackle Ladarius Henderson out of Michigan. So he's 6'4", 315 pounds. He started 10 games for the Wolverines at left tackle last year, a part of the best offensive line of football potentially. And he was at Arizona State previously for 4 seasons where he played a little bit of left tackle and left guard. So if you're looking for a guy that can offer you some flexibility and can be a bit of a Swiss Army knife for you on the offensive line, he's your man. And that's exactly what I'm looking for in round 6, right? Because when you look at Atlanta's offensive line, I'm not drafting a new starter. No, I'm trying to find a new swing tackle. I'm trying to find just the next best pure offensive lineman that if one of those 5 guys were to go down, I could feel comfortable with a player coming in and playing guard or playing tackle. And he's got experience at both positions in college, which I like a ton. So for me, I'm looking for the next swing tackle. Maybe they bring back Storm Norton on a cheap 1-year contract, but for now, Atlanta doesn't have a clear-cut 6-man on the offensive line to step in. And we saw Jake Matthews and Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom all deal with injuries last year. So I think it's always wise to invest in the trenches. So to round out my mock draft, let's look at the selections I made. I went Dallas Turner at number 8. I go Brendan Rice in round 3. I go cornerback with Chris Abrams-Drain in round 3 along with it. Then I go defensive tackle in round 4. Add a tight end since you just moved on from Jonnu Smith. You really only have Kyle Pitts in this tight end room. You kind of need to replenish that area. And then I'm looking for a new swing tackle, new 6-man on the offensive line, and I think Ladarius Henderson would be an excellent candidate for that. So grade my mock draft for me. A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know in the comment section below what grade you would give this mock draft. Give me your worst. All right, that will do it for us on this edition of Falcons Today. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. We will sign off and catch up later.